I'd like to introduce you to Sanelisiwe Yekani, one of the artists that come to the Joburg Theatre to share with us their art, their hearts, and their passions. Sanelisiwe is a young African female playwright, marking her own voice and her own sense of purpose through the art.
Okay, can you see me? Is the light good?
The light is good, the light is fine.
Wow, amazing. It looks, okay, great.
Perfect,
Great.
you look beautiful. So welcome, Sanelisiwe. This is part of a series that I'm running at the Joburg Theatre where I am introducing the amazing artists and people that I know that come through the Joburg Theatre that a lot of people might not know, because usually we work with people on day 2 or 3 of their big dream, right? Before they are the big breakout names that will become, your Trevor Noahs or whatever. These are the people that have started at Joburg Theatre and made their initial engineering of whatever it is that they want to do as an artist through our space. So I'm always so pleased to introduce the people that I know who are doing amazing work to everybody. But more so, I'm a female. I'm a Black female in a world where we're not the ones often telling our own stories. So where I find a Black female telling stories and also working as a director, where we are often the actor and the talent and the pretty flower on stage, I want to introduce Black female directors to the world. It's important, and it's something that should be done. So can I leave it to introduce yourself just for a second here?
Yes, definitely. I'm Sanelisiwe Yekani. I'm a theatre practitioner and an actress. More stage acting, a performer, more than anything. The actress thing kind of limits it. So I do want to say it's a broader horizon. I'm a performer because I also perform poetry, and I'm a playwright. Yeah, that's kind of like the scope of the things I indulge in the arts.
So in last August, you did a piece called Ndiko at the Joburg Theatre, which dealt with the issue of femicide and gender-based violence in South Africa. I found it interesting. People might say, well, women are writing about women's things, but I really found it important to have women write about women's things and be able to tell their own stories. Can you tell me about the process of coming to that particular production and making that work?
Wow, Ndiko, it was actually, I actually came up with the idea of writing it a year before actually writing it. And of course, it's when the news of the femicide in our country, femicide, we all know femicide is a thing that's always been in our country and a problem in our country. But with social media and now platforms where people have access to almost easily tell, with it being in our faces and social media so much, it became more of an evident thing, I guess. It is not now hush hush in different communities that women are being killed, but now it's with us in our homes every day because it's on social media and it's like a click away. The news, the headlines, the hashtags, the conception of the play Ndiko, oh my, it's such a crazy thing to to actually try think back, because it's like the thought is like, oh, okay, I did a play called Ndiko, but the journey of it, I mean, stems from back in 2017. Beginning of the year 2017, I'm not sure, but I was discussing it with my sister, saying that, I really want to get to a point where I write a play responding to the femicide culture. Because number one, I feel like I want to say something about the fact that now as women, we're expected to walk around housing fear in our chests. I wasn't comprehending that amount of entitlement that is felt by our fellow men, human citizens, So it was something laid upon my heart back in like 2017 already. And later on in that year, I wrote the play. I initially wrote it, I wasn't sure whether it's going to be a two-hander or one-woman show or how it's going to pan out. But what's nice about the script itself is that it's very poetic. So it's flexible in terms of how many women can carry the narrative, can tell the story. So I wrote it in 2017, and in 2018, a co-performer and friend of mine, Bongiwe Mazibugo, and I joined heads, and we were like, actually, okay, I've written it and now we want to put it on stage. So it's Ndiko as a play started off as a two-woman show. And we looked for a director. So I went from writing it and then finding the co-performer, which was Bongiwe Mazibugo, a fellow performer. She also studied at WITS, performance and directing, I think, I'm not sure. But yes, a co-performer in the arts. And we decided to put up this play, and then we knew that we needed a director. We needed an outside eye. So she suggested Snenhlanhla Zwane, who is a director and a designer, also studied at WITS. So us three Black women joined heads, and we put this show on its feet. I kind of had to step away from, what can I say? I had to step away from now being the writer and then becoming a performer in the play. And that was an interesting discipline to learn for myself. Also to learn that, okay, if I'm going to give it to someone else to direct, I have to kind of step away. Can you hear me properly? I'm aware that there's quite a bit of noise.
Perfectly well. Don't worry. The noise is welcome.
All right, so yes, we put up this play. The first place it went to is the UJ Arts Festival, actually, in 2018. We performed it at the UJ Arts Festival as the two-hander. It went from the UJ Arts Festival to Pop Art. That was the run for it in 2018, testing out the grounds, seeing how are people responding to it. Because really, more than anything, Ndiko is a Xhosa word for I am present, I am here. And the title itself is a word that was inspired by a friend of mine has a tattoo on her neck written Ndiko, an affirmation of like being here, and which was such a beautiful thing, especially with the idea of writing about the femicide culture that was already born in my head. I was like, this is perfect. This is the affirmation, right? That although we are not seen in the world, or people are refusing to see us or give us room, we are here. And we have every right to demand space. We have every right to demand room in communities and in our homes and in the workplace and in the classroom, etc. So that was the inspiration of the title itself. So it showed then at UJ Arts Festival and Pop Art in 2018, which was very interesting because, I mean, that will be coupled with being a young theatre maker just starting off to make work. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a full room? What does it mean to have an empty room? What does it mean to put up work, right, as a theatre maker, as a practitioner? And we put up the work, and it was very interesting in the sense that you learn a lot. It's not as easy as it looks, you know. I thought it was easy, you know. I thought, oh, you will
just get a stage, put it on a stage, and there you're done, right? That's how often people think about the process. They come to us and like, well, you've got the stage, done.
You've got the stage, you've got the script, you've got this powerful team, you've got the stage, you've got everything going on for you. Why not put up this piece? And you think, okay, sharp, it's going to be doable, and you're going to market, and people come, right? I mean, you know, but it's a very interesting process to learn that you have to almost master each pocket of the process. Even if you don't master it, you have to acquaint yourself with it. What does it mean to be involved in marketing? What does it mean to also maybe be the writer, to also be the producer of a work, to also etc. and so on. So a lot of learning happened in 2018. But Snenhlanhla, Kuzwane, and Bongiwe Masbuko and I were all very happy with the steps that we took for the first trial of Ndiko. It was interesting, it was eye-opening, but more than anything, it was amazing to understand that something that was conceived in my head, that I want to respond to something that's affecting us right now. As a woman, you can think twice about stepping out of the house, because every second day there's a tweet about a missing girl. There's a headline, there's a hashtag. At some point, the news of it was very constant and overwhelming. And I'm not even going to say at some point the femicide culture was overwhelming, because I think it continues to be overwhelming every day. Even before there was Twitter, I think it was overwhelming. Now it's just that the knowledge and the news of it happening in different pockets and communities is in our faces more. So at a time where it became a scary thing to even walk alone as a woman or step out of the house and so on, it meant something big to be able to fulfill the vision that started off in my head, because discipline is another thing, right? You can come up with an idea, then you're like, I wonder if I'll actually see it through. The fact that we could see it through was such an achievement for us, first of all. And the fact that as the writer, I could tell the story in the way that I did was an achievement too. But also the realization of a lot more learning that still needs to be done in all aspects, to almost like get to a point where one is like, wow, okay, we're moving, you know, there's an impact that is being made. So that is just 2018.
Yeah,
Then
no, I hear you. I think a lot of what you're talking about, just thinking about it broadly, having been a people who traditionally tell stories, historically tell stories, but haven't always told stories in the platforms where we would be heard. So like women tell stories to their children, they tell stories to their babies. African people have this oral culture which goes on from generation to generation. But being able to find the tools and the knowledge to know how to put those stories so that they are heard beyond our immediate circles is really crucial. Women have always known that women abuse is a thing, but like people are shocked now. They're like, whoa, it's so big, and we're like, I don't know. But I don't know. Where have you been? But being able to find the Twitter and being able to say, actually, I'm going to put it on Twitter and express it. And similarly, too, the process of learning how to put it on a theater, how to put it on a stage, takes a lot of learning, because you then realize how sometimes closed those spaces are, or you realize how expensive it can be, or you realize just how much of a infrastructure you need to be able to tell your story. And I think that might continue to be a hindrance for the telling of African stories, is how do we tell stories effectively when we don't own Netflix, when we don't own YouTube, when we don't, and largely when our broadcasters, national broadcasters, are political machinery and not really machinery for people to tell their stories and tell themselves. So I think what you're saying is really important.
It's muted.
The muting thing, I swear, half of the things said on Zoom is stop muting.
Madness.
Yeah, so like I'm curious, from your point of view as a storyteller and as being a Black woman, why tell stories at all?
I can't not is my problem. This thing of being an artist is a big problem also at the same time. I can't not do it. It's also one of the things that are placed upon your heart. That's the first reason why I tell stories at all. I can't not tell the truth. I can't not sit there, and because also so rarely do we hear the truth in the world that we live in. whether it's through the news or conversations or the things we watch and take in. As a people, we are scared to be honest about a lot of things, because most of the time being honest comes with punishment in society. It comes with so many consequences. But as an individual who is an artist, who is passionate about writing, creating, I'm passionate about telling the truth, to be honest. I cannot tell stories. It's almost like a lifeline for me personally. When I go a long time without writing, it's not a nice feeling. So that's for instance, that's the first reason I cannot just sit there and not tell the truth and not tell stories. And also the second main reason, I guess, is the fact that if I'm not telling the story, then who is going to? Most of the time we are easy to like sit there and say, oh, someone should do ABC. Someone should talk about ABC. Someone should start a conversation about ABC. Who is the someone? You are the someone, And it clicked to me that yes, this, as an example, this femicide issue is a big issue, and a play will not protect us. A play might not take away the fear of walking out of your house, but it will start and carry on a conversation that needs to be had in order to influence change, to get to a point where there is change, where less entitlement to no entitlement is felt by another human being in spaces upon the Black female body specifically. So yeah, I guess it's mainly those two reasons. First of all, because I really love telling stories. It's something I cannot do without it. And then secondly, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? I can't be waiting for another citizen, another artist to come along and do ABC and sit there and complain about the lack of truth in the world. I have to be the one.
You have to be the one.
That's what I have to be the one. Yeah. And I think it's a healthy way of thinking as well, because I didn't think like that before, but it did get to a point where it's like, oh man, guys, what are we waiting for? Who's gonna tell this truth that we're always yearning for, that we're always talking about? Who's going to do it? You are going to do it, and you are going to do it kunzima, kungekho nzima, uzoyenza, because it might be your calling, it might be something laid upon your heart. But I mean, you have to be the one.
As a Black female, do you feel the burden of having to tell a certain kind of story? Do you feel a responsibility in the kinds of stories that you feel you need to tell? This is making you smile. I'm curious.
I love the question, because my friends and I talk about it a lot as well. Like, the conversation of like, oh, even on Twitter you see it a lot. The conversation of, oh, we don't always have to have sad stories or deep stories. We can have something light. We can have a light poem. We can have a light series, which is all good and well. I agree. I think we can and we should have comedy and the light stuff in life, the escapism. And I think it's great and it's necessary and important. However, me as an individual and what I want to contribute in the art space, I don't feel that these stories are a burden, not for me. For me, it is a burden to not tell these stories. Even I myself indulge in things that aren't perhaps as heavy at times. I think all human beings do, and it's healthy to do so. But that doesn't mean I must totally abandon the work. And for me, I do refer to it as the work, but it's not the type of work that is a burden. It is the work in line with, in line with purpose, in line with, I'm not finding, there's a word, but I'm not finding the word, but it's, for me, it's not a burden, the type of story that are laid upon my heart to tackle. Although that I understand that for a lot of people, it's like, We deal with so much every day. How about lighter stories, which is great, and I agree. But how I, as an individual, contribute and as an artist, I want to tell these stories. These are the ones.
There's a scene. Now this is random, but in what's the thing now? Now that I'm talking about it, it runs away from me. The women with the red thing. Anyway, but there's a scene where it will come to me when I'm not talking to you. But there's a woman kind of locked up in a cupboard, and she finds the etchings or something written by another woman who had been locked up in the same cupboard at a different time. And she makes the comment that I'm now showing you this, speaking to the audience, to bear witness that you have seen not only me, but seen the woman before me in this space. So that idea of having to be the writer in bearing witness. And once you then see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot know. And to unsee would be to willingly do so. And so then that puts on the responsibility on the seer or the listener or the teller of the story to say, once I tell you and you act like it doesn't exist, now you're complicit in whatever happens.
Exactly.
And so for me, the telling of African stories is like being able to tell the stories unseen, unheard, but in a world that intentionally doesn't see them, doesn't hear them. And being able to now own our space and our voice to say, I tell you, but this time if you don't hear it, you really don't want to hear it. But that says something about you in not wanting to hear it.
You don't want to hear it.
You know, it's like that whole, like, not all men thing. When you say, a man accosted me in the street, and somebody says, not all men. And you say, no, I'm not asking you not to answer for all men. I'm asking you to bear witness. Can you bear witness without having to clear yourself and clean your hands?
Be defensive. Can you bear witness to what is actually occurring? What is actually happening without you suddenly washing your hands clean?
Yeah, people just want to clean their hands and go, these things are too heavy. You guys are telling heavy stories. But really, it's just a mechanism of saying, don't tell me, because once you tell me, then I have to know.
Exactly. And also the thing of you're telling heavy stories now, it's a very interesting conversation for me, because I'm like, but I'm not saying anything that is new. Nothing about what I'm saying is new. It's not that now suddenly I'm telling a new heavy story that you don't know of. I'm telling the truth that you are living like among every day. You're living this truth every day. There will be a woman, you know, somewhere, somehow, or maybe you don't know, but someone else will lose a loved one due to the femicide culture, for instance, etc. We are living in this truth every day. You write a poem about heartbreak, for instance, you know, as an example, and people are like, oh no, who hurt you? But we are living this every day. I'm not saying anything new.
What do you say? What's your response to people who say that, you know, a lot of contemporary South African writing, especially female writing, kind of borders on this kind of a pornography of suffering, kind of like a suffering pornography, or like a poverty pornography, where in fact it's kind of borders on the grotesque and the gross and the taboo. And so only being able to source narrative from that darkened space. What would your response to that be?
For me, I don't understand when people are shocked by Black women in this time where they're able to voice themselves, referencing stories or narratives from dark spaces. Which other truths must people reference from? Because yes, it's not that Black women now have only known pain. There's no such thing. There are beautiful things about being a Black woman. But now, to then shut down people who are referencing their truth subjectively as being a place of pain, to tell them you are suddenly doing ABC, is to tell them to not tell their truth. And for me, that's confusing. Who are you to tell people to not tell their truths the way they need to express them? That is a confusing topic for me, because for me, it goes back to trying to police the telling of stories.
For me, it's an interesting thing. If somebody tells the story of Pearl Harbor,
yeah,
it's a valid and important story. If somebody tells the story of the Second World War, it's an important and valid story. When somebody tells the stories of Black women, they're suddenly pornographic in their being too much, don't tell. And it's very funny for me. You can watch like all kinds of suffering and be like, I'm touched. But when they see Black women and have to say, I'm touched, they go, sissy, can't you have more things to tell us about yourself?
Don't you have anything else to talk about? No, I want to talk about this.
It's kind of like a narrative version of saying to us, why don't you smile more?
Yes. It's people saying, okay, we're going to let you guys be who you are and tell your own stories and voice yourselves. And then we're like, we are going to do it. And then when we do it, it's like, no, not like that. Perhaps it's still policing in a new age, in different wording. It's policing in different wording. Now these big fat words are pasted over the fact that you're policing us again. And it's a crazy thing, because a lot of how we are raised as Black women, as Black men, yes, a lot of things are engraved in our brains, and sometimes we don't notice when it's patriarchy taking over. Sometimes you don't see when it's prejudice, etc., which is great, because we're all still unlearning a lot of things. Noted. But to, in the midst of unlearning, try police how people express themselves and what stories they tell, makes you the same enemy we had before the, what can I call our age? I don't even know. Yeah. It repeats that cycle in different wording at a different time. That's what I think about it. I think people should be allowed to tell their stories the way they want to tell them. And if I want to just talk about femicide for the rest of my life,
then that's it. Because like I'm just thinking about, I've been doing a little bit of research on African theater and African voices and the kinds of stuff we're creating beyond individual countries, so being able to share across. And I'm just thinking, part of our lack of knowledge about ourselves in how linked we are, in terms of knowing about Biafra from Nigeria, in terms about knowing about what's happening in Morocco, in terms of just knowing about Zimbabwe, is that we are constantly told that the most selling story about the African body is the smiling, dancing person. Because to tell any other story would be to implicate people who don't want their histories told in a particular way. To tell the story of slavery is to remind Americans that actually, this is a thing. And to give it a different voice, not to just give a voice of the slaves when they cross over, but the story of here and what is left here. When you tell the story of femicide is in South Africa, is to tell the story of apartheid and of the labor systems and and stories about how alcohol has been used in this country to kind of morph who people are inherently. And so often we're told, whether by DSTV or MultiChoice or Netflix, keep them smiling, keep them dancing, keep them going, because otherwise you involve us too much.
Beating the drum, dancing, beating the drum, thinking. There's more, there's so much more, so many pockets. And suddenly when we reach out for the more, it's offensive. When we reach out for the more, it's not convenient, suddenly.
The other thing is, I find that women's voices are really intriguing to me. I was reading 2 identical accounts about the June 16 student uprising. Now, from a young man who was there, now he's an old guy, but he accounts for himself as a young man, and he says, we were leading the students, we decided we're going to do this, we had decided, we thought about it, da, da, da. And then I read one of the few female accounts on the same day, and the woman describes how it wasn't supposed to turn out like this. When we left the school, we were all kids, all of us prepared our school uniform, we were nice, we were clean. And for the first time, she describes how the students were all meant to walk in groups of 10 holding hands with like a student leader at the end of the row, making sure that the students were all taken care of, and how the uprising was really a mistake, that if the police hadn't shot them, the whole thing wouldn't have just gone to hell, right? But I found it intriguing how women tell stories, and how women tell inside stories, and men usually tell outside stories. So I'm just curious about yourself as a storyteller and as an African woman telling stories, and what you found as a difference.
That is so interesting. That is true. I agree with you. We tell stories. It's really from the inside, right? It's almost subjective telling, but in being subjective, you include the collective, and that's kind of like how it feels when I tell stories. I'll use the example. I mean, even the lines there, and with some of my poetry, even when I write, I will use I identify with making it mine, even if the story is not directly mine, but it's mine because I'm living through it. I am here, I am present in this time, and I'm reflecting the times that I'm experiencing. So I agree, and even in the writing, I don't shy away from vulnerability, because that's what it is, right? It's vulnerability for that female writer to say, we didn't know that this was going to happen. We didn't have it all planned out. It wasn't like this big plan that, all right, guys, it's going to be June 16. You know, the uprising. No, we are going about our normal lives, and this occurs. This happens to us. And as a writer, I think that's exactly how I approach things. I am going about my daily life, and this is happening upon us. This is happening upon the happenings. I make my writing very personal, even as a performer, how I access characters and how I try to understand their truths. I always have to make it personal self. How do I come in? How do I relate? What experience or memory of mine relates to this if I don't have a direct relation to it, you know? So I agree. I definitely enter from a personal point, but I've always found that once you have the bravery to be vulnerable, because it takes a lot of bravery, of course, also to just be vulnerable like that and tell the truth. Like, all right, this is happening, and I can't dance and beat the drum and sing away what's actually happening. The house is burning, you know, and I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not. And I think that's the brilliance of women, and how, you know, how they are in how we write most of the time, like you're saying, that very personalized. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Thanks.
Sane, I could talk to you probably for a long time. This is a really great conversation, and I hope this is just the first of many. As we introduce your voice, your subjectivity, your craft, your professionalism as a theatre maker. Often I was trying to Google South African theatre a few days ago, and all Google had for me was like Ethel Fugard and like a few of the old, right? And I'm like, hey guys, there's a dynamic, vibrant, flowing space right now, and it's important that we introduce.
Yes, a hub of theater makers, artists making work right now, like
exactly, and that the new voice that we're creating for South African theater, for African theater, is is unique to the moment, and it's really important that we actively say, Google searches, you will find our names, you know what I mean, and who we are and the work that we're doing. And so this is part of that project of mine to say, let me introduce you to the broader space. Shall you close off the session for me?
Oh my, thank you. First of all, thank you so much. I think it's beautiful that we document and archive what we're doing. If we don't, who will, right? I mean, yeah. So thank you. I've had so much fun actually revisiting, and almost when you tell it, you also like revisit almost, I don't know. You kind of reflect while you're telling it, because you don't normally talk about the process, the experience, etc. So thank you for this. I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to watch interviews by other people as well.
Great. So this is, as I say, the first of many. There's many issues and topics to talk about, and as female Black theatre makers, we're kind of stand as a minority, but I think a minority with something to say, and I'm really curious to see what comes out of that space. Thank you for making time to be with me, and to be with us, and for sharing yourself.